After Sega and Atari made like 47 different subpar mini consoles that nobody wanted besides rednecks making impulse buys at Walgreens, Nintendo came along and said, hey, what if we do the exact same thing but make it good? Which resulted in the NES and SNES Classic editions being so popular that people rioted when they couldn't get one. And since those were so successful and came out 1 year apart from each other, you'd think that the 64 would have followed up in 2018. But then it didn't. And its absence left everybody, including my stupid-ass stepdad, wondering why. But while it's 100% certain that the 64 Classic's gonna come someday, given that the above-average-sized end loves money, it really shouldn't be all that surprising that it's late to the party. Why would Nintendo deprive everybody of something they clearly want? Well, make yourselves comfortable, put on your work boots and respirator, because I had to pull a lot of strings to get him to hire an 8-year-old. Press the subscribe button if you haven't already, and allow me, the Samoan bulldozer Cameron, to tell you what's taking the 64 Classic Edition so friggin' long to come out. I'm sure some of you probably think that since the 64 Classic didn't come out a year after the SNES Classic, that it's never gonna come at all. But releasing products that cause fans to resort to violence and dirty tactics just to obtain one's any corporation's dream. So whether it be late 2019 or 20 years from now, we're definitely gonna get a 64 Classic someday. And I know you're probably wondering that if they do plan on releasing it, then why not get it out as soon as possible? Well, long story short, they don't really need to right now. The Switch is chugging ass in 2019, with tons of great games on the way to continue their wave of momentum. So they've already got so much else going on, then what's the rush in getting the 64 Classic out? I mean, it's guaranteed to make them an assload of money, so you might think they'd be stupid to not want more. But releasing a 64 Mini right now may or may not interfere with the Switch's momentum, so why even take the risk? When the NES Classic came out, the Wii U was still sleeping on Nintendo's couch and eating all their groceries. So N-Dog had to do something to pay the bills. And given the outrageous demand in scalping the NES saw, it's pretty obvious that its success even surprised Nintendo. I know the Switch was already on a tear when the SNES Classic came out, but that was already being worked on while Nintendo was still in panic mode before the Switch came out. After all, the hybrid success wasn't exactly guaranteed, so they needed to make sure money was coming in no matter what. Otherwise, shareholders would have probably given Nintendo a wedgie at the next Space World convention. Plus, many fans, including myself, were pretty pissed off about not getting an NES Classic. So rather than letting aftermarket resellers capitalize on the demand and leave a bad taste in everybody's mouths, Nintendo didn't really have any choice but to give people another chance at getting one without resorting to prostitution. And anybody out there who did, I just hope you didn't get a bootleg like me. At any rate though, I'm just glad Nintendo re-released the NES Mini and made sure to make enough for the SNES. That way nobody had any excuses if they couldn't get one. Cause after everybody had a chance, it was best to let the Switch have the spotlight and hold off on the 64 Mini. Not cause it'd have to make people choose between that or the Switch or anything like that, cause in 2018, people were still buying two separate classic consoles along with the Switch. Not to mention the sales for the Wii and DS didn't interfere with each other either, nor did any of Nintendo's other handhelds and consoles before it. So if Nintendo didn't need the assistance, then why waste a rainy day product when everything's fine? I mean, it's not like they have that many more consoles to rely on for classic editions. So why not wait to release the next mini console to bridge the gap between the Switch and whatever comes next, just like the NES Mini did between the Wii U and the Switch? Because not only would it keep Nintendo's flame lit, but making a 64 Mini would probably be even cheaper to make in a few years than it would right now. Besides, let's face it, the 64 Mini is going to be complicated as hell to make. Because first of all, the emulation's pretty complicated even for Nintendo. According to this guy at Circuit City who called himself Catman, Nintendo had to make emulators for each 64 game on the Wii's Virtual Console. Plus, if the controllers are going to be authentic, then they're going to be even bigger than the actual console, which is just plain weird. And have you ever seen the inside of a 64 controller? There's a hell of a lot more going on there than there was with the NES and SNES. Not to mention, you're probably going to have to spend extra money to play 4-player games. So if people were disappointed at the PlayStation Classic costing $100 before anybody even knew that it'd suck, then Nintendo's gonna want to try to keep the 64 Classic at no more than 100 cold hard American dollars. And the longer we've got to wait, the easier it'll be for them to make that happen. Because once gaming got past 16 bits, things got more complicated all around. And Nintendo's definitely well aware of this. It's one reason why I think the Genesis Mini is going to be way better than the PlayStation Classic, and why I think the next classic console to come from Nintendo will probably be from the Game Boy line rather than the 64. And why I think the next classic consoles coming from Nintendo will probably be from the Game Boy line rather than the 64. I go into way more detail on that in another award-winning video though, but even though Game Boy Minis wouldn't be as complicated to produce as the 64, it's still a good idea to save classic consoles in general for a rainy day. Because in addition to Nintendo not wanting to burn through their limited trump cards right away, I also think making us wait will prevent us from burning out on them. After all, it's better to leave people wanting more than to give too much. Because aside from November and December, you almost never see Nintendo release more than one first-party game per month. And it's not because their development teams happen to finish games 1 month apart. It's because Nintendo tries to ration everything out so nothing gets overlooked. which I think's a great idea, except for when they add 2 to 3 NES games to their online service per month. Cause could you imagine Netflix being so successful if they started with 20 movies and added 2 to 3 every month? But anyway, as excited as people are for the 64 Classic coming someday, and while I do understand why they aren't rushing it out, I am a bit skeptical that it's gonna be as good as the NES and SNES counterparts. Cause first of all, the 64 had like a million different color variants for consoles and controllers, with pretty much all of them being awesome. So if I'm gonna have to go from using a Pikachu console and a Hori pad to the standard colors, then I'm always gonna consider it a step down from using the original hardware. Meanwhile, the NES and SNES Classics are better to play in pretty much every way aside from nostalgia. I guess it is possible that we get some color variants though. After all, there is a gold Famicom Mini, but I really don't think they're gonna make Hori pads or the Pikachu 64. And even if they do, I'm probably gonna have to fight some guy named Cup just to get my hands on him. But another problem the 64 Classic's gonna face has to do with the game selection. With Microsoft being buddies with everyone lately, I don't see rare titles being a problem to include, which might not have been the case had they rushed it out, by the way. But despite rare titles being the most important third-party games to include, there's still a good handful of other games that never make the cut due to licensing issues like GoldenEye, Elmo's Letter Adventure, and No Mercy. And if I can't play the Nintendo 64 without some good old-fashioned wrestling, then I don't even want to be alive anymore. I'm sure Nintendo's gonna botch preventing people from hacking and adding ROMs, but because the file sizes of 64 games are even bigger than my dad's gut, you're probably not gonna be able to add all the good games like you could with the previous two consoles. And I certainly don't want to have a 64 Classic with a bootleg-ass USB drive sticking out of one of the controller ports either. Hopefully these issues won't be as big of a deal when the 64 Classic finally does come out, because if it's not going to be better than playing the original console in every way, then personally, I'm not really in a rush. And even if it is guaranteed to be the best way to play 64 games, I still don't mind waiting, because we've got plenty to keep us busy in the meantime. But I'll tell you two people who keep me busy in the meantime are today's patrons of the day, Dojin Shinji and JT Murdoch. Or if you'd rather show support by picking a shirt or mug up, then send pictures or videos of you rocking it to make a cameo like these badasses right here. Anyway, why do you think the 64 Classic's taken so long though? Is there anything I missed? Do you think we'll get one at all? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments below and I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to see more videos like this. And if you want to help this channel grow, then simply liking and sharing goes a long way. My name's Cameron and I'll see you next time.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.